Hey everyone, Jason here. Thanks so much for tuning in. There's a lot happening in our world right now. So Justin and myself, as staff of Centennial Road Church, wanted to create an environment where we could sit down with a group of our friends and have a conversation about things that everybody seems to be talking about. Racism, justice, and the response of the local church. In this three-part series, you're going to meet our friends Keon, Denise, and Abena. They're going to share openly and honestly. And I want to encourage you to take the time to listen to them and to learn from them. Episode 1, they share honestly about their own personal experience with racism, what it's like to be a parent in this season, and also the beginnings of a conversation of the response of the local church. Enjoy. Hey everyone, Jason here. Welcome to this online conversation called Stories That Matter. I am so excited to be hosting this conversation with my coworker and friend, Jeff Sox. And today we have three awesome guests that are joining us. There's a lot happening in our world. There's lots of stuff out on the media about race and social justice and racial prejudice and a whole bunch of different things. And so we brought three people in our network together to have an honest conversation about what it means to look at this issue from a Christ-like perspective. First to the table that I'm going to introduce today is Keon Raymond, former CFL football player, somebody who loves Jesus. He's a father of a lot of kids. It's awesome to have him here, and we're thankful for his time. Then we also have my friend Denise Snyder. She is from the Red Deer area. She is a mother of three. She's got a master's degree in Old Testament and is just a brilliant thinker. I've really appreciated how she's shaped my worldview as a friend over the last number of years.
And we've got my friend Abena, and Abena has known my wife since grade 6, I think. Like, it's been forever. And we both went to Houghton College together. We were both grads from there. And she's been a really steady, strong voice, not only through this time period, but before it, and has given a lot of good practical advice in moving forward as well. So we're super, super excited to have you guys all here with us. And we just want to thank you guys for your time. We want to start off by really just addressing the elephant in the room. And we realize that this could be a very long list of experiences that you guys could share with us. But if you guys would be willing to share your personal experience with racism and help us understand your life experience and how that's affected you. Abena, you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. So I was born in a wonderful, beautiful island in the Caribbean called St. Thomas. So I went from an environment where everyone basically looked like me. And those who didn't look like me were tourists who only came in for a short period of time, just for their vacation spot. And when I was 9 years old, my father decided he wanted to further pursue ministry and he wanted to head into seminary. He also was an alum of Houghton College and pursued his studies in Kentucky at Asbury Theological Seminary. So we moved from St. Thomas and moved to Wilmore, Kentucky. Where I had my first experience of dealing with people that weren't like me. And it wasn't until I went to school that I began to see an issue. In my apartment complex, it was very diverse. We had people from Saudi Arabia to Kenya, from Australia, and we were all in the same housing, the international housing. Now, going to school meant meeting new people, right? So there were two particular girls who were white that basically decided they were going to make my life miserable from the time I got onto the bus. So hurling insults. At that point, I still had my accent. So I sounded different. I looked different. My clothing was different. I stood out like a sore thumb. And they took that opportunity to their advantage. And for the most part, I was level-headed. Like, I really didn't waste a lot of time with foolishness at school. I didn't have time to waste by any means necessary. I just wanted to learn. But the hatred, putting things on my locker, just derogatory messages that were being hurled my way on a regular basis, that it wasn't until teachers started calling my parents saying, hey, this is probably something that you should address with the principal. So when they brought it to my parents' attention is when they sought out the principal, and it was able to be addressed. But the catalyst for that was when I was on the playground, and a girl thought I was dirty and wanted to wash my skin away to get the dirt off to make her look more like her. So I look more like her, excuse me. And that's really the first time where I recognized people weren't used to seeing minorities. People weren't used to seeing people that were different from them. And, you know, families weren't having those conversations. So ignorance was growing.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Abena. And, you know, I'm so sorry to hear that you had that experience.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's really humbling to hear that. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Keon, would you be willing to share as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just, my heart goes out to you, Abena.
Thank you.
Like just, I can imagine being that only person, you know what I mean, around, and you being different and looking different, and kids, feeling like that you don't belong. For me, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, so I don't know if you guys know, that's kind of where the whole Michael Brown situation kind of transpired, a few years back. But I grew up in the city of St. Louis, where there's always kind of been a lot of racial tension in St. Louis. But I grew up around a lot of Black people, so you don't tend to see so much. You hear about a lot of things where you don't go on this side of town because you're more than likely to get pulled over, or what I mean, something bad might happen to you because of it. But from my instance, me playing sports since I was 5 years old playing football, it wasn't until I transferred and went to a school out in the county. So majority of the Black people I'm from in St. Louis lived in a city, and so the suburbs was in the county with the school. So the school that I went to was probably predominantly 85% white. And so I went out there and I played football out there. And so when you start to see that you are different, you know what I mean? It was because I played football. I think there was a little bit of sugarcoating because it was something that I could bring to the table. But I remember in an instance, my one of our first trips going into an away game. We're sitting on the bus, and I'm spanking brand new to this school on this team, and you don't really talk to anybody. You just go out there, you play football, and you do what's asked of you. And one of the offensive linemen on the bus, and I heard them, they were talking in the back, and they were saying some things, that I wasn't too keen upon. And I say, man, that, I spoke up and I was like, man, that sounds, racist, And the guy stands up and says, man, I can't be racist. I have a color TV. And, when he sits there and says that, like everything in me, I wanted to sock him, just the aggression that I had. But I knew from that standpoint that, me putting my hands on, another white kid in our school known as predominantly white, I probably would have gotten in trouble a little bit more than than my counterpart would have, of being expelled or something from school, But it was just mental. It was small things like that, having to deal with them on a daily basis, and where you have to learn how to have thick skin. It's you have to be able to, brush the stuff off and keep going. You have to be able to say, sticks and stones break your bones, but words that never hurt, and to be honest, man, words hurt. You know what I mean? And when somebody continue to tell you, you're not worthy, every day, every time they see you, you're not good enough. You're dirty. Why do you look like that? You know what I mean? And things like that. Or you're only good to run a football. You know what I mean? Because we used to have you guys, hurling things back in the South. And so when you hear comments and things like that growing up, it tends to kind of manifest in who you are. And I think that's where my relationship with Christ kind of came in to be able to help continue to give me a solid foundation on where to stand from.
Thank you for sharing that, Keon. Really, really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability. Denise, last but not least, could you share with us your experience?
Yeah, so I am actually from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So our latest conversation stemmed somewhere really, really close to me. So my experience growing up was really varied, I would say. I don't feel like I've had a ton of direct experiences with racism, but I know people in my family have. I'm biracial. My mom is white and my dad is Black. And I actually grew up right in the middle of inner city Minneapolis. So we owned a home there. But again, I was a bit sheltered. I was homeschooled until I went to high school. And then when I went to high school, I went to a inner city, majority Black public high school. I grew up kind of living in a really Black neighborhood, but then also spending a lot of my summers in really small towns where I went to Bible camp with mostly white kids. So I had a lot of variety growing up, and I don't remember experiencing a lot of direct racism, but I remember some things happening with my dad growing up. So my dad, like I said, is Black. He's a college educated Black man. He works in medical insurance. He has a Black belt in Kung Fu. So if we're thinking maybe what people might think of as stereotypical, he wouldn't maybe necessarily fit some of those things, but that doesn't always matter to everyone, right? So I've been with my dad. I remember being really, really young in the car with my dad at night. I think we just went to get gas or something, and remember him getting pulled over. And I remember the police officer being very accusatory toward my dad and asking if I was his daughter, and then asking me if that was actually my dad. And so just coming at him kind of with an air of suspicion about why he might be out and about. And there was another time when I was in my early teens and we were driving one way down the road and a police car drove the other way and immediately turned around and pulled my dad over for going, this is in miles per hour, but 33 in a 30 zone, which is not much over the speed limit. So pulled him over and they took him out of the car. They handcuffed him. They put him in the back of the police car for going 33 in a 30, I guess. And so it was just a really weird experience, me knowing my dad has never done anything illegal besides, speeding maybe. And yet having all of this suspicion placed on him for no apparent reason. So I know my dad would, and I guess in his view of police, would certainly understand that police are there to protect people overall, but he also would have maybe more of a natural suspicion of motives more than other people might have. My parents were married in the 70s, and my grandparents, my mom's parents, were very accepting of it right away, but my grandma had a sister, so my mom's aunt, who wouldn't go to their wedding because she didn't approve of it. And another one of her aunts came to the wedding but wore Black before it was okay to wear Black to weddings, kind of thing, and then they both came around, right? Like once they actually got to know my dad and things like that. But there was just kind of an automatic disapproval of something like that. So I know my dad and mom have had a few experiences here and there. I would never say so far I've been really blessed in that I don't feel like I've had direct experiences with people being what I guess I'm not quick to call people racist. So with really direct experiences of that, I've certainly had little they might call them microaggressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here and there, curiosity, people not being aware of things. There's been lots of that kind of stuff, but I feel like I'm really lucky to not have any super harmful racist experience for myself.
Awesome. Thank you both, or all three of you, for sharing so openly and honestly. I know two of you for sure are parents of children, Keon and Denise. Abena, are you a parent as well?
No, not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay. So
They
this
sleep
one's
well at night.
there you go. This one's specifically for the parents. What's the challenge with that? I mean, you have your own firsthand experience. I know, Keon, you're living in Calgary, multicultural city in Western Canada. Red Deer is in central, Alberta, part of Western Canada, but it's not as multicultural. What are some of the challenges that you are now facing in light of what's happening right now in our world, just with your kids and educating them, questions they might be asking, any insights that you can give us on the outside looking into what's unfolding, on how we could just be aware of what we can do to be better alongside of you situations. Keon or whoever wants to tackle that one.
Yeah, I would say for me, I don't have probably a lot to add yet. My kids are really young still. So my kids are 4, 2, and 7 months. So they're unaware of what's going on, and they're unaware of, they've spent a lot of time with us in Minneapolis when we see my family, but no one can get across the border at the moment. So we're not even having to really think about any of that with them. They're not seeing the news. They're not super aware of the things that are going on. But it is something that I've thought about, how we'll talk about these kinds of things with our kids. My kids, it's interesting. Like I said, I'm biracial and I married a white guy. And I mean, no one would guess that my children are my children. My baby has white blonde hair and blue eyes, and my boys have curly hair, but they, back in the old days in the South, right, you would, it was a good thing if you could pass for being white, and my kids easily could. But I have thought about that because I posted this on social media, and I don't believe cops are hunting down Black people, or that every Black person is in danger of being killed or anything like that. I'm not fearful in that way, but I am aware that there are prejudices out there. And so sometimes I feel a little bummed that my kids don't look a ton like me. And at the same time, sometimes I think that might be better for my boys, that they don't look as much like me, so that there won't be an automatic prejudice against them maybe, or a suspicion against them. So that makes my heart sad, that in ways that I have to feel grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think there's a lot of good that can be done. I like being part of an interracial family. I think that's a good thing. And I think that helps break down barriers all around. So the more my kids are, they have a Black mom and a Black grandpa, and to have all those different parts of their family, I think is a really good thing, and starts them off on a better foot than a lot of people who are completely separated from other races, right? So it's interwoven into their family already, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, well, mine's, I got some older kids. My oldest is 17. I have 3 boys and a girl. My oldest is 17, 15, and 13. The boys and the girl, she's the youngest. She'll be 10 here in a couple of months. Just going back, it was a few years ago when I think it was 2015 or 16, when me and my wife decided to stay in Canada. And we had an opportunity to go back home, to move and to live, just because, football was over, and it's like, okay, we've done our time in Canada, let's go back and get our kids closer to grandparents and things of that nature. But then we sat back and weighed pros and cons, especially about having 3 young Black males in our family, especially my oldest, 17. He's driving now, and I'm not saying, Calgary's perfect or Canada's perfect, you know, but there is a bit of a relief where, my son can get in the car, he can go out to a friend's house here, and me not have to worry about if he's coming home at any point in time in Canada. Whereas my fear heightens, back home in the States. I was in high school, my dad used to tell me I had a curfew at midnight. I was like Cinderella, I had a midnight curfew. And I couldn't understand why, all my friends are hanging out 1, 2 in the morning, and he's like, you need to be home, before midnight, and I didn't understand that at that moment in time. But now, you start to understand why he was so adamant about me being home at a certain amount of time. And even from when our kids were young, me and my wife, we've always done our best to make sure our kids are educated, on just our culture. Whether it's, them watching Roots growing up, or, them understanding, Black adventures, just knowing, our heritage and where we come from, and not allowing somebody to tell us where we come from, and just, my kids just understand it. I remember, having the conversation when they were young. We were living in Tennessee, just telling them, some people are just not going to like you, for the color of your skin, and it's hard to tell a 5 and 6-year-old that, and for them to understand and grasp the gravity of that, and they're looking like, what do you mean? Why does that matter? And for me to not have any answers for them, at that moment in time, it's tough, especially for a parent, but in regards to, all that's going on in the lights of the situation, I'm excited that, conversations are being held right now. I'm excited that my kids get an opportunity to hear and to witness. And I hate that there's lives that's been taken for conversations to be started, but the conversations are going, and I think there's adamant change that are starting to happen, and there's people who may feel uncomfortable about certain situations or conversations, and now these conversations are being forced, which is good, where it's, we're no longer tap dancing around, each other, and I don't want to say the wrong thing to offend you, or I don't want to say, and I had to tell, man, it was a lady that jumped up, on my Facebook. I don't want to get off the track, but a lady that jumped up on my Facebook, today, she was like, I don't have to prove, that I'm not a racist, because I don't want to say Black Lives Matter, and I couldn't believe, what I mean? I'm like, nobody's saying, that, Black Lives Matter, more than yours, more than whites, more than Hispanics, it didn't say that. It just says matters, and I think people miss the point of matters, just matters, and so what I do, especially as a father, raising, Black children, just to educate and allow them to understand that they matter, and to ingrain in their head, in their minds, in their hearts, that they matter.
That's good. Very well said. If everybody could know that they matter, I think that would be a huge difference in our world. So thank you once again for your wisdom and insight. Justin, you had a question just about the evangelical church and community and what we could do to come alongside of when challenges like this hit our society. Why don't you go ahead and ask it?
Yeah. So I think let's take when we say evangelical church, we're kind of talking about North America in general, so Canada and the US, but let's start there. What do we need to be, what does the evangelical church need to be aware of in regards to racism, racial tensions, and injustices, not just now, but moving into the next year and 5 years and 10 years and beyond that? Abena, you want to take that one?
Sure. I would start out by saying, first, it exists. And we have to be able to acknowledge it and not take the position as, because it's not happening to me or somebody that I know, that it's not really my problem. because although it didn't originate with any of us here or any of the people in our community, and although it's not any of our faults, it's still our issue. And it's still an issue that we need to collectively fight together against. So I would first start out by saying that it's alive and well, unfortunately, acknowledging that, and then having the conversations just like we're doing, staying informed, staying educated, speaking with someone that's different from you, getting a cup of coffee when Corona finally lifts, going to our local coffee shops and just, hey, I don't know everything. And the fact that it's okay for us to be able to talk, I would encourage my minorities to not shy away from that conversation, because I think sometimes we have told our counterparts that it's not their issue, it's not their business, just kind of, forget about it. But really, we need to foster a safe environment where we can all talk about it. So recognizing that it exists, having these conversations, staying informed, whether it's reading literature, listening to podcasts, watching documentaries on Netflix. There's resources out there. So stay informed and then decide whether or not you want to take action. If we're saying, we're Christians, we are called to love our neighbor. And not only that, I think of the story of the Good Samaritan, in that he ended up helping someone that culturally was different from him, that religious leaders passed by because, they were too focused on the religion aspect of things. They were too focused on getting to the temple. But the Good Samaritan did not pass him by. He got him shelter. He took care of him. He paid for, the ability for him to stay in the room wherever he was. And he got to know him on a personal level. So I think that's an example that we need to continue to emulate.